name is Jim Brown.
Pull it right over to you, the other mic.
My name is Jim Brown from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I'm EPA's project manager for the Ottati and Goss Kingston Steel Drum Superfund site on Route 125 here in Kingston. The reason we're here tonight is to discuss the 5-year review that we're conducting for the Ottati and Goss site. Every 5 years, we conduct one of these reviews. The last one was in 2014, came out in May of 2014. And as part of the 5-year reviews, we meet with the community and try to find out what your perspective is on the site, whether you have any concerns about the condition of the site, whether you think you're well enough informed on the site. This is an old site. This is the 6th 5-year review. All of the construction was completed in 2010, and since 2010, really all we've been doing is collecting groundwater data and continuing to monitor the progress in achieving our cleanup goals. After we did the in situ chemical oxidation in 2008, 2009, and 2010. So that's, it's been somewhat a routine site ever since construction has been completed, but every 5 years we still do conduct a formal review, and as part of that we sit down with the community and determine whether there's any significant issues that you're identifying. And of course we have a town ordinance in place, and we'd just like to check in on the status of that, make sure things are going well, and it's being complied with. With me here tonight is Michael Summerlin from New Hampshire DES and Robin Mungen from New Hampshire DES. So we'll discuss the data that's been collected since the last 5-year review, but before I get into that, I just want to open it up to all of you and just hear whether or not there's any significant concern that you have, whether or not you feel you're well enough informed about the site and think you need more updates than we're providing. Again, given that construction was completed and really all we're doing is collecting groundwater data, it doesn't mean you need to be concerned. We're not here because you should be concerned. It's just part of the process is meeting with y'all. So I would just open it up to you guys to see if you've got anything you want to bring up, whether there's any concerns you might have.
Is there anything in the water sampling that you've done that should be of concern to the town?
We'll go over the data that's been collected since the last review. We collected a round of data in 2015 and a round of data in 2018, and the data pretty much is showing the same thing that was shown in the last 5-year review, that concentrations are continuing to decrease over time. There are a few small isolated areas of the site where it's being a bit more persistent in those areas where the activity took place, the real steel drum conditioning operation, which involved rinsing drums and dumping them in lagoons and dry wells. In some of those areas, the concentrations of contamination in the groundwater are still higher than we'd like to see. They're going down. But overall, when you look at all of the wells in the monitoring network, everything is continuing to decrease over time. In floral, it's a relatively new contaminant that's part of our suite of contaminants that we're starting to look at all Superfund sites in New Hampshire. And we did look for it in 2018, and we did find it in monitoring wells in the center of the site. We're starting from the center. If we find it, then we expand our monitoring network. And I will be discussing where we found the PFAS, and what our next steps are.
I have a lot of questions, but I'll wait to hear at least
Okay.
what you found, you know.
Okay. Like I said, you know, when two people from New Hampshire DES and EPA show up, you think that there should be concern. There doesn't need to be any concern. It's just, you know, we're here as part of the normal community interview process that we do as part of 5-year reviews. So don't feel like you have to come up with some concern. If you don't have a concern, that's great. But maybe I should just get into a review of the recent data that we collected, and maybe based on that, you'll have more questions?
Sure.
Okay. Will my voice get picked up?
There's a mic over there.
Michael Robbins, did you want to say anything before I start?
Not yet.
You want to grab the microphone, please?
Sorry, amateur. As I said earlier, we collected samples in 2015 and 2018. The data collected in 2015 is the same type of data, the same locations that we've been monitoring since 2010, and it's continuing to show decreases over time. The data that we collected in 2018 included sampling for PFAS. PFAS is a chemical that's been around since, I think, the 1940s. It's used in a wide variety of readily available consumer products.
That's similar to the PFA and PFOA?
Yeah, it is. PFOA, and yeah, it's a PFAS. There are, I think, 3,000 different PFAS chemicals. And we did detect it at the Ottati and Goss site. You know, it's found in everything. It's found in Teflon, nonstick pans, and it's found in shampoo. It's found in conditioner. It's found in toothpaste, dental floss. It's found in our clothing. Anything that's treated to be water repellent, anything that's treated to be grease repellent. They treat sails. You know, sailboat sails. It's just been used widely for so many different products, and from what I've been told and what I've read, there's virtually nobody who doesn't have some PFAS in their body. You know, we've all been exposed to PFAS. The Ottati and Goss site, you know, the nature of the operation from 1950 to 1980 was to take in steel drums from a variety of sources that had chemical residues in them, and they would clean out the insides, recondition the drums, and resell them. That was 1950 to 1980. So it's not terribly surprising that we would find some PFAS at the Ottati and Goss site. So the areas that we found it, really, we were just looking in the central area of the site, and we also looked, you know, up gradient of the site and down gradient of the site. So no surprise that the highest concentrations were found, you know, primarily within that fenced-in area. That's approximately 6-acre fenced-in area of the site, right close to Route 125, and just on the other side of Route 25 in the Country Pond Marsh as well. We found it. We found very, very small trace levels down gradient of the site and up gradient of the site as well. Possibly background concentrations. It's PFAS. PFAS is everywhere, but undeniably, you know, the site is a source of PFAS. We're finding it at the site.
How many parts per trillion did you?
The highest is about 5,600 parts per trillion. That's combined PFOA and PFAS, yeah.
So is that something that triggers, at least with the state, that we need to consider doing wells within, what is it, 1,000, 1,500 feet beyond what you're already testing? In In other words, if we find it here in Kingston, we're told we need to test out, what is it, 1,500 feet?
I think it's 1,000.
1,000 feet.
Yeah, and Jim will talk about what our next steps are now that we've discovered it at the
Okay.
site.
So now that we found it,
Let me just ask you one more question. Up gradient, what were the levels of contamination there?
up gradient, looks like the highest was 7.87 parts per trillion.
70, so that...
7.87.
Okay, the threshold for treatment is 70 parts per
70
trillion?
70 is the ambient groundwater quality standard in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And
And
that's
that's either PFOA or PFOS or combined PFOA or PFOS.
what they're talking,
But just so you understand, right now, that's our standard, but we are going through rulemaking, and those numbers will likely change.
will it go up or down?
I don't know yet.
I mean, they're talking about lowering.
Some of them, yeah. Some, because we're going to regulate 2 additional compounds as well as PFOA and PFOS. And,
And down gradient, it's at even a lesser concentration. The maximum is 3 parts per trillion. But, part per trillion levels, 3, 7, it's the same number. It's incredible that we're even able to detect anything at a low part level. So it's associated with the Ottati and Goss site. So we are going to do additional groundwater sampling.
Can
We're
you
gonna-
go back to that?
Yeah, sure.
Looking at your scale there, colors, is purple worse than red?
Yes, this
So what were
color,
those parts on the other side of 125?
the highest concentration is this purple number here, which is a combined PFOA and PFOS, 5,600 parts per trillion. On the other side of 125, right within the fenced-in area, close to the toe of the slope of Route 125, was 5,100 parts per trillion.
Okay.
And the number, not as high, but, looks like the maximum is around 672 parts per trillion.
The red boxes are concentrations greater than 70, which is
Yep.
the ambient groundwater quality standard,
But less than 1,000?
less than 1,000, and purple is 1,000 and higher.
Any more questions on this figure? So next month, starting the week of May 13th, we're planning to go out there and do additional sampling. We're going to do additional groundwater wells, and those additional groundwater wells will allow us to better define the northern and the southern extent. We're looking in the middle, we've looked up gradient, we've looked down gradient, but we want to make sure we've defined the edge of the problem to the north and to the south as well. So we'll be sampling groundwater wells along South Brook and along North Brook. And we are going to be doing monitoring of private wells in the area that have been part of our monitoring program for a long time. We've never found any site-related contamination in any of these wells for the couple of decades or longer of monitoring that we've been doing.
Have we tested them for PFAS since it was discovered?
This will be the first time we're sampling for
It was
PFAS.
discovered in what, 2018?
Yeah, late 2018. Was it September?
The sampling event was in September. The report just was issued a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So I think there's approximately 15 private wells, 13 private wells that we're sampling. Those are the blue dots that show on this figure, all the way down to this location here. It includes the Boy Scout camp as well.
So what size radius? Is it 1,000
Well,
feet? or-
this is 750 feet, so we're going well beyond
Past that.
1,000 feet.
The intent of this next iteration of the sampling was to go and test the wells that are already in the sampling program. We've been sampling these residences every other year.
Could you speak in the mic, please?
Okay.
Michael, there's a microphone.
He's got it. He is speaking.
Oh, I see.
So the in close. That's our, our next step outward.
So you're gonna test the PFAS in the wells you're already monitoring. How soon before you start going to all the others within the 1,000-foot radius?
Yeah, it really does depend on the data. Hopefully it's non-detect in all of these locations.
What do you mean it doesn't depend on the data? If you
No,
detect,
he says it depends on the data.
okay.
I see what he's saying. So let's take, for instance, that the closest well is maybe 5,000 feet out, and you don't detect anything, then you wouldn't think that you needed to go past it, but you wouldn't go any closer. So if we've got it within 1,000 feet, then there might be a residence within that 1,000, 1,500 feet that we wouldn't know if we were contaminating their well.
Yeah. Yeah, this is,
How about like Shell? Do you do Shell?
yes, we do.
That's a public water
That's-
source, yeah.
I think that's the Shell station right there,
You gotta start getting your coffee.
or,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So this doesn't mean this is going to be the end-all of our sampling. This is just the next phase. And depending on the results that we get, we may feel that we need to do more. We're also doing surface water sampling. These triangles on this drawing show the surface water locations that we're going to be sampling. There's one here, 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 and we're also going to be doing up-gradient surface water sampling. This is North Brook, that's South Brook, so we'll be sampling, that'll be sort of our surface water background samples. And the two culverts for North Brook and South Brook. We're going to be sampling there as well, and a couple of locations within Country Pond Marsh as well for surface water sampling.
Where is Country Shores Campground on there?
That's what the dots are.
They're in this area here.
A little further to the left and down.
Yeah.
Go down a little bit more. There.
Right here?
Down about 2 inches. Right
Down? This is the marsh here.
Yeah, go below that.
Oh, they're above that.
No, they're above the march.
Oh, Country Shores, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think of the
The Boy Scout camp is down here, but the campground is up here. So we have two surface water sampling locations. And again, depending on what we find, we may need to do more.
So if you go out and you find something over the acceptable limit, then what? Then you provide you provide a treatment system in that location?
For a residential water supply well?
How about commercial?
Yes.
So I'm just,
If anybody's above the drinking water standard for PFOA or PFOS, they will be immediately provided with bottled water, and then we would make plans to install a treatment system.
and it doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential?
Right.
Okay.
And fortunately, PFAS can be treated with granular activated carbon.
I have one.
It could be worse. It could be one of these contaminants that
It's one of the better
doesn't
ones.
absorb well to carbon. But this contaminant does absorb very well to carbon.
It does filter it out well. I've had one for over a year. It filters it out really well.
So really, that's all we had to present tonight. Other than the PFAS, it's same old, but
So where it's state property, you guys own it now. Thank goodness we didn't take it. You own it. And so if residents were to call in here and say, I'm really concerned about having PFOAs in my water, so we would send them to the owner of the property, right? So if you could leave us with your cards so we can immediately, you don't want to call, I'm assuming, they're the property owner.
It's either Jim or Michael.
Yeah,
They're
we're
the
gonna be
project
work-
managers for the site, or myself, you can call me too.
We'll be working together with,
So I don't think a lot of the people that are here may not have been here when the site was offered out to the town to see if the town wanted it, and obviously we refused it, and we wanted the state to own it for that reason, so if any other contaminants came up.
Surprisingly, there are Superfund sites that are owned by the towns,
Really?
but the state still continues to take the responsibility to
Really?
take care of the issues. It's part of the deal between the state and the EPA, so the EPA handles it for a certain period of time, 10 years after final construction. Well, even that's a 90-10 split, but after that 10-year period, then it's all state obligation.
So you own it now? Do you own the full brunt of it?
The state owns a portion of the
state owns
site
the
itself.
fenced-in portion. This-
The site is more than just the 6 acres, the
Right.
state-owned property.
Yeah.
The,
You own the fenced-in area?
yeah,
Right.
a little bit more than that.
Okay.
And then, like for instance, not too far from here, there's another town. They did take possession of the property, the Superfund site, but the obligation remains with the state for the groundwater monitoring. If there's issues with drinking water supplies outside of, if issues were to develop outside of the site that were related to the site, the state would be taking care of it at that point. This site is still in that 90-10 split phase, so EPA is still the lead agency right now, so that's why homeowners that would be concerned would contact both of us.
Is it 10 years beyond what the chemical part of it, and now that you've kind of realized this PFOAs, they got another 10 years on it?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
We're
You were
gonna,
hoping that?
that would be nice.
Yeah.
This will be a first in my career. I mean, we'll be transferring the site to the state this September. PFAS has been identified. So my understanding is that this is a new issue. So we don't just put it all on the state's plate. EPA still has a responsibility to work with the state to make sure we fully understand the PFAS issue at Ottati and Goss.
So based upon the fact that everything drains down into Country Pond, essentially, under the road, over the marsh, you had some wells there where you injected certain chemicals to help eat away at some of that stuff, and it worked. Is there any chemical that will eat away at the PFOAs if we should try that injection process?
I think they're evaluating it, but it's still very preliminary. You know, one thing that I've heard about is like injecting liquid carbon to sort of kind of stabilize it, absorb it, keep it in check, keep it in place. It's not a destruction, obviously, but it's something to prevent continued migration. I'm not aware of any demonstrated chemical oxidation or reduction that would work on PFAS.
Is there any reason why the town of Kingston and Newton should or shouldn't be concerned? Because that's a body of water where people swim, whatever. Is there any reason why we should be concerned, or the public should be concerned, to swim in that body of water?
Well, we, as of today, no. I mean, we don't have the data. We're going to be out there in the middle of May, and we'll have the data back in June. In time, before the real summer season starts. So we'll know whether swimming exposure is a potential health risk. If we're detecting significant PFAS contamination in the surface water at these 3 locations. We'll certainly be working with the town and the owners of the camp and the Boy Scout camp.
So you haven't tested for PFAS surface, on the surface water, those indicators near Country Pond, which are all below the limit, are all groundwater?
Groundwater, yeah. This will be the first surface water samples collected.
And how long do you think that will take? So if there were problems out there, we could notify the public or whatever we needed to do.
I would think we'd have preliminary data in June. I know for the surface water samples we will, because our EPA lab is going to analyze the surface water samples. The groundwater samples and the private well samples are being sent to a commercial lab, and I'm not sure how long it takes to get preliminary data.
A few weeks.
2 weeks. Do you think there's going to be additional money? I read that PFOAs are everywhere, all the Air Force bases and Army bases, and now we're finding it everywhere. So like the MBTE slush fund, it was a big fund that they treated water and what have you for MBTE and the gas. You see the federal government or the state coming up with a fund for municipalities. So like now we're getting tapped with it. We think it's caused by the fire foam that was used. I'm not 100% sure, but we believe it may have been that. So is there going to be any funds that are available for communities to go after? So if we have more and more issues with PFOAs, that we can set up treatment systems?
Not to my knowledge.
That might be something that the Groundwater Trust Fund could be accessed for, I don't know.
We tried to tap them.
Yeah, I don't think it is at this point. I guess the question would be, will the government, will the EPA initiate lawsuits for the producers of the chemicals, like they did against the petroleum industry?
Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't be done by the program that I work in. I don't know if any other program at EPA is thinking about pursuing that. But the potentially responsible parties for Ottati and Goss, they've cashed out, so their liability has already been taken care of. So any future actions at the Ottati and Goss site, in the near term, what you're talking about could be years, before that concludes. So in the near term, any funding for the PFAS issue would be coming from EPA.
It looks like we were concentrating on the center of town here. In fact, the house next door was one of the most recent homes that came hot for PFOAs. And so we thought it was more concentrated in the center of town, and looking at that and doing more testing, working with the state, what have you. Now we're finding that it's at the south end of town, so it creates more of a health issue for community members.
So, we hope we don't find anything in the surface water, or, especially the private wells. But we'll have the data in June. And
Do any of the private wells have treatment systems on there for the chemicals that have been discovered in them?
now,
No, we haven't discovered any site-related contaminants in any of the drinking water wells.
yeah. Yeah, so far,
Nothing has migrated from Ottati and Goss to any
no.
private wells?
Not that we know.
Is that because the levels are so low, or that you have discovered zero?
It's been non-detect.
No detect
It's been below our detection limits
for any chemicals?
for any chemical associated with the site.
So it looks like the injection that they did they did it for a long time,
Well, even before that, we weren't finding anything in the residential wells.
but it hasn't migrated
Mother
out.
Nature's been washing it out.
Well, I mean, it's,
Well,
we've
they rebuilt the whole wetlands area. They dug it up, dug all the stumps out, all the trees out, and replaced them with more stumps and trees.
Yep. And, tons of material was excavated.
Yeah.
And some of you guys who have lived in Kingston for a long time
They cooked it.
can probably remember the days of the drums piled up all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Comes down to people rinsing out barrels and drums.
They actually had a big hot top plant on site, and they were cooking the dirt, digging it up and cooking it down to the water table.
Yep.
One of the worst areas was where they were stacking the drums in the back section of the site. And then again around the building where they were physically pumping it down into the ground and dumping it into open wells.
Yeah, it initially started with a dry well close to South Brook. Then, they found that they were contaminating South Brook and Country Pond, so they went to leaching fields in the middle of the site. So, over the years from 1950 to 1980, there's been a lot of dumping of rinse water from the drums, various locations on the site. And, the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of removal of drums, soil removal. The structure that was out there was removed. And then in the early 2000s was the major excavation project of this portion of the site and a significant portion of Country Pond Marsh as well. And then following that, we did 3 rounds of injecting chemicals in this general area of the site, 2008, 2009, and 2010. So there's been a significant amount of remediation done at the site, significant amount of mass removed. The PFAS levels that we're talking about in the PFAS world are high. I mean, 5,000 parts per trillion, when you're talking about screening levels of 70 parts per trillion, 5,000 is high. But, that's 5 parts per billion. That's for most of our contaminants of concern at the site. 5 parts per billion is our goal, is our cleanup goal. Parts per trillion are, like I said, I'm surprised we can detect contaminants at that level. Low single-digit part per trillion levels we're now able to detect. So, the 5-year review that will be going out in May, it'll be available to the public in May. As of today, the only significant issue that's identified is the PFAS issue. And the recommendation is to collect additional groundwater sampling, sample the private residential wells, and do surface water sampling. And we're doing that. And depending on the results that we get back in June, we might have to expand the sampling effort to an even bigger area.
So how much sampling do you think you're going to do prior to June or in June?
In May, we're doing the 13 residential wells. We're doing the surface water locations that I went over, and we're doing additional groundwater sampling as well.
Do you think it's a good idea that you come back in after you get the results and maybe give us some information on that so we can inform the public? And if it is high, I mean, it's up to the board, but I would recommend that they do, just in case it's a public health issue. At least if, we can let the public know, well, this is what they found, it isn't too bad, or it is a significant issue. Maybe you shouldn't be swimming, fishing, whatever else.
Yeah.
So I think, what do you think, Chairman Heights?
Once they do the testing, if
Right.
they identify that, then yeah.
I think
Just
either-
like if they identify it in the private wells, it'll be put on bottled water, and then the treatment system will be put in their place.
I think it would be a good idea either way if they come in and notify us that the testing was done and this is what they found.
As soon as we have some preliminary data, I'll get on
You guys think?
get on your calendar.
Yeah, I'm looking up.
But if we find something that, is significant, we're going to let you know right away. We're not going to wait to get on your calendar to come talk to you.
We'll
We
know.
will come and talk to you, but we'll notify you as soon as we know.
We'll know when the state puts a for sale sign out there.
strongest readings were, I guess, those are on the, just on the east side of 125? I would presume you're probably concerned that those are migrating down gradient towards the lake, like.
So the purple ones, right?
Yeah, the general direction of everything is toward the lake.
Yeah, I remember I read all the files like 15 years ago, and like
Yeah.
a lot of the chemicals were going that way, and I presume
Yep.
these, you just started testing them, so you don't really know,
Yep.
but they probably move with everything else.
And Northbrook and Southbrook are obviously flowing to the marsh, to Country Pond. The groundwater is generally flowing in this direction as well.
Don't eat the fish.
There is a fish advisory
Is it?
out there
Yeah.
already for Country Pond based on PCBs from the site.
And they're recommending you don't eat the fish?
There's a, do you remember the number of ounces allowable per month?
I don't remember the specifics, but it has to do with the number of 4 or 6 ounce meals of fish per year that's recommended to limit your intake to.
It's not that much different than the entire state of Maine recommends because of, pollutants that just come from the air.
Yeah, the
Well-
entire state has a fishing advisory for mercury.
Right.
I have a copy of it right here, if you want me to leave it.
That'd be great, thank you.
For this site, we made it a little bit more stringent for PCBs. And, depending on what we find for PFAS, it's pretty stringent right now for PCBs. If PFAS were to make it even more stringent, it might just be practical to say, don't eat the fish.
So is that something you work with New Hampshire Fish and Game on as well?
Yeah.
So they have advisories out to those that go out and do ice fishing and bass fishing and whatever else?
They'll either post it, like, we have one site over on the Coakley landfill
Yep.
where they've just posted it as catch and release.
I've yet to meet anyone on the pond, and I talk to the fishermen a lot that eat the fish. Nobody.
Would you please use the microphone,
Yes.
sir? Just pull a microphone for you.
I said, I live on the fishermen all the time, and I've yet to meet anybody that's eating fish.
Yeah, there's always someone.
Settle in the soil, then leaches out into the water, then gets in other organisms? Is it reasonable?
No, well, fortunately, PFAS does absorb to organic material. So any organics in the soil itself will attenuate the migration of PFAS. It's obviously not totally attenuating it because we're finding it on this side of Route 125 in the groundwater. So it is migrating in the groundwater.
Have you
And-
looked further out into the pond?
That's what we just discussed we're going to do.
I have trouble hearing.
In May, we're going to be
Okay.
collecting surface water samples in the pond
Thank you.
and additional groundwater samples. Sorry if I wasn't speaking up.
Yes, I have a question.
I don't really know. It would be a very site-specific number. I think for Country Pond, we'll look at this. I mean, Country Pond is a real bona fide swimming exposure scenario. I know, were you asking groundwater or surface water?
I was asking for the surface water screening level based on that
Yeah.
groundwater value of 5,600.
So the screening level that we would develop for this site would be based on, pretty conservative swimming exposure scenario. But, in this particular case, it's a body of water that's a legitimate swimming exposure.
Right.
So I think at some other site in New Hampshire, they developed a number of somewhere around 700
Correct.
parts per trillion for 3 months of exposure.
Correct.
3 months of swimming. It's like swimming every day for 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's not at least as we know at the moment, it's not a dermal absorption problem. It's getting water in your mouth, swallowing water while you're swimming. So there's conservative assumptions on how much someone would consume while they're swimming every day for 3 months, and it was somewhere around 700.
Right, so that's a point. So 600, what's on the edge of the marsh. So that's my concern. I know.
Okay.
But so that's my concern.
Well, the wells would be screened below the marsh, so they would be groundwater, deeper than the bottom of the marsh.
Well, you have really high levels at the edge of the marsh, in both overburden and surface water, and deeper groundwater. So concerned about possibly, we don't know for sure yet, the lag time between sampling and the
Well, in this next round, if we are finding significant levels in the surface water, let's say we find non-detect in the surface water,
unlikely.
I wouldn't be concerned about fish tissue for PFAS. If we find significant levels in the surface water, it would take us quite a while to mobilize to get out there and collect fish and analyze the fish tissue. So we just have to have a discussion amongst ourselves. I mean, the fishing advisory right now is pretty restrictive, and if it's true that people aren't really eating the fish anyways, we could probably make a sound decision that, in abundance of caution, let's just advise folks don't eat the fish.
Is there any way to export samples for the surface water, since your lab is doing it?
They'll be analyzing them as quick as they can. They may have the results before May is over with. There's a hold time of 7 days or 14 days. Yeah. So if they get them around May 14th, they're not going to hold them for 14 days and then analyze them. So, there is a good chance that we could get the data in late May.
Shouldn't some of those locations, seeing they're a public water source, like a campground or whatever, don't they come under those regulations from the state or federal government because they are a public water source to those people that rent there? So shouldn't they already be testing for that?
Yeah, I think for PFAS, the testing is only required on certain size public water systems, and with a campground only being a transient summertime situation and not serving thousands of people, I don't think they're required to do that. I'm not in the drinking water program, but I believe it's only certain size public water systems.
Thank you.
So can I ask one more question?
Well, this is 750 feet. So I'm not aware of one. I mean, we'll double check that, but I mean, this is that's the gas station, and this is like a trailer, I think.
Do you show the business across the street, 111, 125?
Which business?
Number 111, Route 125. It's diagonally across the street It used to be a hazard cleanup company, I guess.
Which,
South across the street.
ECSI?
in this direction?
Right there, right, we go right straight across. Towards the water side.
It's on the other side of 125.
It's on this side.
Right there,
Yeah.
yeah.
These two are beyond 1,000 feet, as well as this one is
Okay.
as well. But again, based on the results that we get, we may need to expand further. 1,000 feet this is beyond 1,000 feet. Well, not quite, but 750. That's these two are within the 1,000 feet.
So I guess this question would be for the state. When PFOS is discovered, is it your practice to require a foot radius from a contact well, everything else to be tested when one's found with exceedance of 70?
We typically go 500 to 1,000, depending on the site.
So if they find it in the whole country pond, you've got to test every
Well,
camper location along that pond? Is that true?
Say that again?
So in other words, if you're finding it in a country pond in the water, on the water, surface water, that you test,
Oh, if that's above the drinking
Yeah.
water standard?
then what do? You notify everybody along the lake?
That hasn't happened yet, but I don't know whether we would do that or not, but that's,
The pond is used as a drinking water source.
yeah.
so if it's 500, let's say 1,000, at that magnitude of 5,600, why wouldn't the 1,000 become the minimum?
Right, I mean, that's reasonable.
So
If we identify water supply wells within 1,000 feet of our exceedances.
well, do we currently have wells outside of the test area but within 1,000 feet?
The ones that we're gonna be sampling are on the periphery of the site.
The groundwater. Private wells are.
Yeah, but you went out originally, what, 750? Well, I know, I can obviously see to the right, that looks like, I mean, they're probably like 1,500. But to the south of the site, it doesn't look like you got Peabody Supply there. Do you do their well?
We haven't been.
Okay, well, that would be within 1,000 feet though, wouldn't it?
Well,
But isn't that more on the upgradient side?
Well, if it's bedrock and it's within 1,000 feet, we'll sample it.
Well, I thought that was the first question I asked, and they said once they get the testing for the monitoring wells they are testing, then they're gonna go looking outside. But that was the first question I asked when we began the discussion.
Yeah, they haven't tested the monitoring wells yet for PFOA.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have the results for these residential wells yet either. Some of the residential wells we're sampling are within a smaller radius of 1,000 feet, some of a greater radius of 1,000 feet.
So why does it take so long to get test results back? Is it just the labs are really overburdened by it, or
Just getting in the queue.
there's so many other people doing testing?
It's not a simple test. It's pretty involved.
Expensive.
We know this.
Oh, we know it is.
$300 a pop.
I think it's more than that.
Oh, the state gets a better deal than you do then, 'cause they're paying less than 300.
Well, the surface water will get done for free, the EPA.
Well, if you find a cheaper place, let us know. Actually, start testing 1,000 feet out from this one, right?
Anybody got any more questions?
Well, we'll be back in June.
Sounds good.
Okay, appreciate you coming down, keeping us up to speed.
Thank you very much.
So in general, I guess it's a no-brainer that the majority of the concerns were around PFAS.
Yeah, I mean, we really haven't had any issues from the site. I mean, it seems like every time you come in, although it's only once every 5 years, that, you know, the levels seem to be decreasing and just something that's gonna take a long time.
What I would say is, I mean, I know Mark's been around for a while, dealing with this for 25 years, and Chief Briggs has been involved in it. I'm new to it, and I was kind of looking forward to tonight because everything I've heard, it was a success story as far as a cleanup. Now I'm a little bit concerned now with dealing with a different problem, but that has no bearing on the state or anyone else, but it just seems like what was a great success story seems to be a never-ending saga that we're going to have to deal with.
I guess
It still may be.
yeah, I guess
Until we
it
get the data.
depends on what you consider
Success?
success. I mean, you're shooting for, what is it, 5,000 parts per million, right?
5 parts per billion for a lot of the other contaminants. For PFAS, it's,
Right. And that,
the exact number is still,
I mean, that doesn't mean that property could ever be used for any type of groundwater wells to be consumed or anything like that, so it just option that it's gonna be clean, that you could, you know, back to virgin land, it's never gonna be.
It looks like you'll be coming every 5 years in perpetuity to,
yes, we will be. Your children will be sitting in a 20th 500
Or somebody.
Well, you,
I retire in this summer, so.
but I mean, you handed it off to the 10, right?
EPA still does the 5-year reviews to make sure the state.
Oh, even when you guys take full responsibility for it?
Always, that's the 5-year review.
Okay.
Can you leave a business card with Susan, so if we do get calls, that we'll know how to refer and who
he's
to
going to be
refer?
retiring, he doesn't want to,
Oh, yeah,
It's my concern until my last day,
which is?
August 30th.
Wow, we gotta get you in here before June then.
Will.
Again, thanks for coming in and
Thank you very
updating
much.
us. Appreciate it.